Welcome to Bullying Prevention in Elementary Schools. Our project staff includes myself, Carol Fox, Mark Dawkins, Jenna Easton, and Bob Garrity. Our project director is June Jenkins, and our project coordinator is Lois Wallenhorst. Today you'll be hearing from, in addition to myself, Mark Dawkins, Jenna Easton, and Bob Garrity. We are a federally funded grant that is overseen by a core management team. On the slide you see a number of our community partners from both the Albemarle County School System and the Charlottesville City School System, as well as many community partners. Our grant is divided into 5 elements. The first element is school safety. You see they are listed the 3 programs that are involved in school safety. The Olveus Bullying Prevention Program, restorative practices in both the middle and the high schools, and security cameras which were installed in our middle and high schools. Element 2 is alcohol, tobacco, and other drug use. We use the Pennsylvania model of student assistance programming in both our middle and high schools. We also work with social norms marketing at the high school level and Project T&D, which is toward no drugs in our alternative schools. Element 3 is the student behavior social emotional support element. This involves responsive classroom at the elementary school, developmental designs at the middle school, and some of our schools are also implementing Second Step. The 4th element of our program is mental health services. It involves motivational interviewing at the middle and high school levels, as well as Teen Intervene. Element 5 is the early childhood component. This involves the high scope program for both the 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, as well as family support workers. When we began our program several years ago and began looking at the various programs that we would be implementing, we started noticing the overlap of some of the outcomes. Responsive classroom, as you can see in the yellow circle, involves effective classroom management and social emotional learning. It also emphasizes the development of empathy, communication, problem-solving skills, and conflict resolution. Furthermore, it involves a school-wide impact when it is implemented with fidelity. It enhances positive relationships. It looks at the effect of one's behavior on others. It implements changing behavior, developing stronger community, and a systems change. Some of our elementary schools are implementing restorative practices, which involves restitution, fair process, repairing the harm, and balancing of power, as well as those elements that are listed in the center. It also looks into protecting those who are harmed. The 3rd evidence-based program that we implement at the elementary school is the Olveus Bullying Prevention Program that you see in the yellow bottom of your screen. The pink bottom of your screen. This specifically addresses bullying behavior. It talks about student and staff responsibility. It is both a preventative and a responsive measure, and there is parental involvement. The purpose of the Venn diagram was to show the overlap as well as the individual components of each of the programs. This helped us when we went to our schools and when we were working with various stakeholders so that they had an understanding of the importance of implementing all of the programs so that they would receive the benefits from all 3. In our webinar today, we hope that you will gain an understanding of the following points. We'll define bullying and identify the types of bullying behaviors. We'll explore the different roles in bullying situations. We'll recognize misdirections in bullying prevention. We'll identify strategies to address bullying, and we'll provide resources for bullying prevention. As we previously mentioned, we implement several evidence-based programs. However, the Olveus Bullying Prevention Program is the only program that solely focuses on bullying prevention. Therefore, for the purposes of our project, we use the Olveus bullying definition that you see on your screen. Bullying is when someone repeatedly and on purpose says or does mean or hurtful things to another person who has a hard time defending him or herself. Bullying involves 3 key components. It involves an aggressive behavior, It is typically a pattern of behavior that is repeated over time, although we'll address the typically piece further on in the webinar today. It also involves an imbalance of power or strength, which we will also further illustrate in a few moments.
In response to requests from schools that were not implementing the Olweus Bullying Prevention Program, we developed a training to address bullying through positive school climate. And one of the things that we talked about during that training were these challenges to defining bullying. You'll see that the first challenge is regarding whether or not the behavior is unwanted aggression or is it just rough play. Cues to look for to answer this question are to look at the relationship between the kids and also look at things such as expressions of body language as well as the atmosphere of what's going on around the students. This challenge is especially common, particularly with boys. As mentioned earlier, an important step in defining bullying is that it must be unwanted aggressive behavior, which is often defined as the intentional use of harmful behaviors against another child. These behaviors may be threatened or real. How can we tell in the playground or in the hallway if behavior is actually aggressive or if it's just play? We can't always rely on children to tell us what's really going on, since children who bully may often explain their behavior as just messing around or as just in fun. Rather, we have to look at cues to help, such as how the children involved relate to each other, and again, looking at expressions and body language of all the kids involved. Another thing to consider is, are the students involved long-standing friends, or do they have a history of issues between them? What are their expressions and body language? Does it look like both of them are having fun, or is one showing obvious or subtle signs of distress? Remember that when in doubt, it's important to follow up, especially if you don't know the children well. And of course, even if a behavior you observe isn't bullying, it still may not be acceptable in a school or other setting. If you look at this chart here, this was initially provided by the Olweus Bullying Prevention Program. However, we adapted it to include friendly teasing and conflict. It helps us to distinguish the difference between friends who are just playing rough or teasing one another verbally, when individuals are in conflict, whether it's physical or verbal, and then of course when it is bullying. You'll see the first row addresses the relationship of the students. The second row addresses the power between students. The third row distinguishes the intent of the behavior. And then finally, what is the result of the interaction between the students? The second challenge to defining bullying is all about repeated behavior. The Olweus definition clearly distinguishes that the behavior is repeated. However, some schools of thought do not rely on the issue of repeated behavior. There must be multiple incidents of aggression, or if there's a concern that future incidents of aggression will occur. That's key. Bullied children typically experience multiple incidents of bullying or a pattern of aggression against them. But according to the CDC, bullying also may exist if there's a high likelihood that the behavior will be repeated. Just because bullying typically is repeated over time doesn't mean that a one-time incident isn't bullying or that adults should wait for a pattern to emerge before responding. Finally, the third challenge is the question of power imbalance. If you see here at this picture, this is sort of the stereotypical image that one might get when considering bullying. The big kid who is bullying the smaller kid who might be perceived as a nerd, maybe. But also consider the fact that the smaller kid in this picture might have more power than the bigger kid in certain situations. There are different ways to define power imbalance, such as popularity, background and demographic characteristics, such as whether a child is a member of a majority racial or ethnic group, or whether he or she has a high socioeconomic status. Whether he or she is in the majority regarding sexual orientation may also be considered. One important way that students often recognize power imbalance is access to money, resources, and information, such as who has the best clothes, who has the best cell phone, the best video game system, that sort of thing. Finally, one can also exert power over others by outnumbering them. For example, having a large group of friends to join in the bullying of a single child, or by having a weapon.
Next, we will get into the different types of bullying, and we're going to look mainly at direct bullying, which is an aggressive behavior that is directly communicated to a targeted child. For example, pushing, verbal taunting, mean text messages. We're also going to look at indirect bullying, which is an aggressive behavior that is not directly communicated to the targeted child, such as spreading false rumors. As you can see from the slide, we've listed a few examples being physical, verbal, cyberbullying, which can be both direct and indirect, relational bullying, which is the same as social or emotional, and then damage of property. The next slide is a picture of the Oveus Bullying Prevention Circle, and this is a great slide to use when talking with other staff members and talking to students to help identify the role that everybody plays in a bullying situation. If we would start in the middle with the letter H, that represents the student who's being bullied. Now if you direct your attention to the top left-hand corner, which is letter A, we'll start there and we'll work our way around the bullying circle. A represents the student who's doing the bullying, and they are typically the one who starts the bullying and takes an active role in it. The next person in line and closest to that person would be known as the follower. And the only real difference between the follower and the person doing the bullying is that they don't start the bullying, but they do take an active role. Moving along the continuum, you would next get to the supporter, and that's in position C. And they are also somebody that is in support of the bullying, but they do not take an active role in the bullying going on. They may be somebody standing on the outside, laughing or pointing, bringing attention to the situation. Next, you have the passive supporters, and they are once again in support of bullying, but they do not display an open show of support. Directly in the bottom, sitting in the middle, is the disengaged onlooker, and that's essentially what it sounds like. These are the people that have blinders on, and their whole role is they do not want to get involved. They don't see anything, they don't hear anything, because they feel that if they get involved, that could potentially come back to reflect on them in a negative way. Heading back up the other side, you have the possible defenders, and this is a person who dislikes bullying and think they ought to help, but they're not sure what they should do. And then lastly, at the top right corner, you have the defender in letter G, and they dislike the bullying, and they help, and every time they see it, they help or try to help the bully student. As I mentioned before, this is a great activity to do among staff, just to help them recognize the roles that other students play, but also to show students exactly what's going on when somebody gets bullied. It shows them that it's not just something between the person doing the bullying and the person being bullied, and that they all play a role. That way they can determine whether or not they want to play an active positive role or an active negative role. This activity can also be found in the Oveus materials. The next slide is a video entitled Misdirections in Bullying Prevention by Catherine Bradshaw. Catherine Bradshaw is the Deputy Director of Johns Hopkins Center for Prevention of Youth Violence. She has extensive knowledge in the areas of aggressive behaviors and school-based prevention, as well as bullying prevention.
We all want to prevent bullying. It's a clear goal, but how we stop bullying behavior is not always clear.
Bullying is very complex. It's critical that we keep in mind some potential misdirections when we're thinking about trying to prevent bullying.
Bullying is a complex issue. As a result, some approaches that work well in other situations may be problematic when applied to bullying. We'll discuss 5 misdirections to avoid. Zero tolerance or 3 strikes and you're out policies are often used by schools in reaction to violent offenses, like carrying weapons or fighting. When it comes to bullying, zero tolerance is typically ineffective or can even make the bullying situation worse. Zero tolerance is not recommended because it's unrealistic and disruptive giving the number of students involved in bullying. It doesn't allow for intervention and may isolate children who bully from needed role models. Suspended or expelled students may have a lack of supervision when they stay home, and severe punishments can deter reporting.
When there's a zero tolerance policy in place, sometimes that can actually cut down on the number of individuals that are comfortable reporting bullying offense. They might be afraid of the zero tolerance policy or view it as too harsh or just solely punitive in nature, and doesn't actually provide an opportunity for intervention to stop the problem.
Conflict resolution and peer mediation can be effective ways to address many types of student conflicts, but not bullying. Conflict resolution and peer mediation is not recommended because it implies both parties bear responsibility and may further victimize the target.
In the case of bullying, we don't have a situation where there's just a disagreement. It's a situation of abuse. Quite often the victim doesn't really want to be seen in the role as a victim, and doesn't want to be identified or brought out or made to feel even more emotionally targeted or physically targeted within that group. And bringing them face to face with the perpetrator often can validate those roles and that power differential between them.
Some schools address bullying behavior by implementing group therapeutic treatments like anger management counseling or empathy building. Group therapeutic treatment is not recommended because group members may model bad behavior, and group treatment that involves aggressors and children who are bullied can reinforce bullying behavior.
Similarly, you wouldn't want to have a group where you brought together victims and perpetrators within the same group, because that might serve to be very disempowering for the children that were targets of bullying. It could also reinforce that power differential between them.
Bullycide is a term that's come into recent use and should be avoided. This term suggests the overly simplistic notion that a suicide may be caused by only one factor. Those who actively work to prevent bullying can help prevent bad outcomes, including suicide. But bullying prevention efforts do not, in and of themselves, constitute suicide prevention. Although bullying may be a factor in suicide risk, it is often not the only one.
We also know that suicidal ideation is pretty common among youth. During adolescence, there are issues around impulsivity that very well could lead to a suicide that is actually completed. So it's important for us to be aware of that potential link between mental health and suicide, and the role that bullying could serve within that. But we don't want to overstate that link here. We also want to be cautious to clarify that there isn't an epidemic of these concerns, but when there are certain instances of bullying that are linked in some way with suicide, that we recognize the role other factors like mental health could play in them.
Some schools address bullying as a topic on a single day during a staff training session, a parent-teacher meeting, an assembly, or even in the classroom. These types of efforts can represent important initial steps of a comprehensive long-term bullying prevention strategy, but they may not be effective in reducing bullying problems if implemented in a piecemeal way.
Independent or piecemeal types of approaches probably are really not going to be impactful. They might very well raise awareness during that one day, but they're not going to be sustainable types of efforts. So we really recommend having a more comprehensive and integrated approach that involves a variety of activities. Even though there are a number of misdirections we should really try to avoid in our bullying prevention efforts, there are a number of reasons why communities and practitioners should be optimistic about the issue of bullying prevention. There are a number of best practices that have been identified, and we also recognize the importance of the research documenting significant impacts of bullying on youth development and youth outcomes. So this is a critical time for us to take stock on the research and to identify what best practices and some potential strategies we should avoid.
So how do we prevent and stop bullying? It takes a comprehensive approach to help create the right culture for children and youth. StopBullying.gov is a resource developed by experts in the field to help develop long-term solutions that inspire a safe, respectful culture in your school and community. Visit StopBullying.gov for more information.
Now we will get into the surveys that we regularly conduct in the city and county schools here in Albemarle and Charlottesville. I will speak specifically about 3 surveys, that being the Peer Support Survey, the School Climate Survey, and the Bullying Prevention Survey Monkey. Starting first with the Peer Support Survey, this is a survey that's given to all students each fall in grades 4 through 12. This survey allows students to name their peers whom they believe to be targets of bullying. The results are tallied and counselors follow up with the students whose names are given 3 or more times. We provide counselors with talking points and a script to follow when they're talking to these students. Of course, it's not uncommon for students to report that they are not being bullied or that the bullying occurred in the past. Students who do report being bullied are then interviewed 4 weeks later to determine if the bullying has continued. Meanwhile, plans are made with the students to ensure their safety and to help in the bullying. If you look at the peer support survey slide on the right-hand copy, if you click on that form, it's a hyperlink and it will take you directly to a copy of that peer support survey. There is a slide that shows the peer support video, and we were fortunate enough to have our local Charlottesville and Albemarle students take part in this video, and it's a great way to get everybody on the same page as to what bullying is and what it isn't, and also encouraging them to take the survey as serious as possible so that we are able to help as many people that are affected by bullying. If you click on that slide, it will start the video.
You've heard a lot about bullying.
But here's what you need to know.
Bullying is a real problem.
Even if you're not involved, you know someone who is.
And the fact is, the effects of bullying can last a lifetime.
Bullying takes on different forms.
And you're going to need to know how to identify them.
Hey, give me the ball. It's my turn now. Hey, I was here first. Hey, I need my ball back. So, what are you going to do about it?
Guys, come here. You have to look at this picture of Mary. What is she thinking?
That's so ugly.
You've got to post that. That's too funny.
She thinks she's so cool. Wait till everyone sees this.
Oh, they will.
I can't wait to see her face tomorrow.
Check this out.
Hey, nice hat. Did mommy buy that for you?
Actually, I bought it myself.
Actually, I bought it myself.
Wow, you talk dumber than you look.
What's wrong with my hat?
Other than the fact that you look like a loser.
So, what's the difference between bullying and just joking around?
Bullying is when one person uses their power to hurt someone else on purpose. Maybe that power is their size or strength, or maybe it's their popularity.
What all a bully really needs is the will to hurt somebody.
So think about it. Do you know anyone who's experiencing physical, verbal, or cyberbullying?
This survey is here to help. It's a way to get your voice heard.
It's completely anonymous. No one will know but you.
And it's not snitching if you're getting help for someone that really needs it.
The only person who is going to make your school a safer place for everybody is you. Do you care?
I care.
I care.
I care.
I care.
I care.
We care. Help stop the bullying.
And the next next thing we'll talk about is the school climate survey. This is an electronic survey given every spring to students in grades 3 through 12. These surveys deal with school climate overall and also include bullying behavior. Once the surveys are completed, they're analyzed and an individualized school report is formed. When the school report is compiled, a member of the Safe Schools Healthy Students project leaders will meet with the administrator of that school and go over the reports, answer any questions that the administrator has. The Safe Schools project leader will also offer to review that information from the climate survey with the entire staff or any parent groups based on the administrator's wishes. The administrator typically uses this school climate survey data to help guide in school climate planning, specifically being the school improvement goals. The final survey that we'll talk about today is the SurveyMonkey survey, and this is an electronic survey also. This survey is given to whole school staffs. There are 2 tracks on this survey. One list of questions for students who are, for schools that are implementing the Oveus Bullying Prevention Program, and then there's another track of questions for students who are not implementing the Oveus Bullying Prevention Program but have other bullying prevention activities in their schools. Once all this information is compiled, it produces an overall report, which is combined data from all of the schools in the city and the county of Albemarle. It also produces an individual report for each of the schools. This way we were able to examine with the administrators and with the staffs of each school to find out what activities are currently going on in the schools in the area of bullying prevention, and we can formulate goals and plans to help increase those activities to reduce the incidence of bullying in the schools. The next thing we will get into will be school-wide activities. As you can see from the slide, on the right is an example of an electronic announcement that we sent to all of the schools K through 12 this past October as part of Bullying Prevention Month. And it highlights a video challenge, pledge posters, and Mix It Up at lunch day. During this presentation, we will speak more about these activities. Let's first talk about student assemblies. Student assemblies are used frequently K through 12 in Albemarle and Charlottesville to help kick off bullying prevention activities for the year. Some schools will use them as their overall kickoff. Some schools will use them midway through the year and close to the end of the year to help support the message. Occasionally, the schools will bring in special guests, and some of these guests have included the American Taekwondo Association. It's a great way for all the students and staff to come together on the same page and move forward in the area of bullying prevention. Mix It Up Day is an annual event typically held in the fall, sponsored by Teaching Tolerance. The focus is to encourage students to identify, question, and cross social boundaries. On this day, students are asked to step out of their comfort zone and connect with someone new at lunch. You can get more information about Mix It Up Day on the Teaching Tolerance website at www.teachingtolerance.org. If you would click on the I Was Mixed Up picture to the left of the slide, it will take you directly to that website. Unity Day is another event that we recognize here in Charlottesville, Albemarle area. Unity Day is hosted by Pacers National Bullying Prevention Center. It is an annual event held in October each year. Students and school staff are encouraged to wear orange to unite against bullying. This shows those who are being bullied that they are not alone and allows students to lead the movement against bullying. You can get more information about Unity Day by visiting Pacers website at www.pacer.org/bullying. Speaking of more school-wide activities, I wanted to highlight a few of the posters that we are using here currently. Here are 2 examples of I Care pledge posters, and as you can see, I Care is an acronym. The I stands for I am signing this pledge to help stop bullying and will. Choose to do what is right each day. Ask for help when I need it. Respect everyone at our school. And encourage my friends to include others. This activity has been really popular and successful, especially in the elementary schools here. What we've been able to do is combine this poster with a large sheet of plain paper, and we have the students come up and read the pledge, and then they'll sign their name on the paper surrounding the pledge as a public statement of bullying prevention. On the next slide, you can see two examples of the Oveus materials. In the top left corner are the 4 anti-bullying rules, and this was one submitted by the Meriwether Lewis Elementary School, and the bluebirds represent their school's logo. At the bottom right-hand corner of the slide, you will see a copy of the Oveus bullying circle, which we went over earlier in the presentation. These are two examples of posters that were submitted by elementary school students. And then lastly, this is an example of a student-created video. These high school students entered into a video contest, and they were very successful in the contest. They were one of the finalists. And this video is currently being shown not only in high schools and middle schools, but also in elementary schools, as putting out a positive message for bullying prevention and also encouraging other students to be creative and think outside the box and come up with their own videos and ideas.
You want your mommy? Little baby. Yeah, good.
I'm coming to save you! Aw, you crying? You want your mommy?
That was a good one.
Yeah, we got it.
Hey, really, guys? It's not funny, guys.
Classroom activities with the bullying prevention include materials from the Oveus program, role play activities, class meetings, using literature, children's literature, to talk about bullying, and integrating bullying in the curriculum. Some of the Oveus materials that we use are a book called Class Meetings That Matter, which gives you lots of ideas for the class meeting. Bullying DVDs that give you information about bullying prevention, and the teacher's guide that provides you with DVDs of acted out scenarios, film scenarios that you can use to stimulate conversation. All of this can be done in the context of the class meeting. The class meeting is a very significant part of bullying prevention. The purpose of the class meeting is to have folks gather each week at least. Some schools do it more often. So the kids sit in a circle in the classroom and talk about various subjects. The teacher can incorporate some of the things we've talked about so far. They can talk about issues of the day that the children want to talk about. They can do examples of bullying skits or role plays during that time. But basically the purpose of the class meeting is to build community. By building community, we're finding that if kids know each other well, they're less likely to bully each other, or if someone is bullying, they're more likely to intervene and protect the ones that are being harmed. On the screen, you'll see an example of a book called One, and this is a very interesting piece of children's literature that came out a couple of years ago, which has no human beings in it. It's all just paint blobs, but the paint blobs are actually living through a bullying situation and changing shape and changing attitude. And we recommend that this be used in classes. We use it. There are lots of other book choices that you can use, but you could start with this one if you wish. School bus is a place where we find conflict, behavioral issues, and bullying taking place. So we've implemented a number of ways to assist bus drivers in schools in reducing bullying on the school bus. We work with students on school safety. The school usually has a safety program that they like to present to children in school, either in whole school assemblies or grade level assemblies or classroom meetings. Different ways to do that are using the Peaceful School Bus Model, which is a book by James Dillon, which we have used in the past with some of our schools, where you have a whole school bus meeting 3 times a year, similar to a class meeting, to build community on the bus. Some staff resources to look at. We host statewide bullying prevention networking meetings from time to time, where bullying prevention programs from different schools are represented across the state of Virginia. Folks come and they share their experiences. Individuals give pre-planned presentations on specific skills and techniques on bullying prevention. Well, we've had lots of folks come from various communities all around the state, people who have just started bullying prevention, people who have been working on it for a while, and we find that lots of the frontline teachers and counselors who are implementing are quite expert in their areas and share lots of good information with each other. We also provide book studies. One book, Little Girls Can Be Mean by Michelle Anthony and Raina Leindert, is very useful in talking about a topic that seems to be in the news a lot. Another book is How to Bully Proof Your Classroom. This is authored by Caltha Crow. She is a leader in the responsive classroom approach to teaching and learning. And her book involves the idea that building community through the responsive classroom approach, using morning meetings, which are different from the class meeting that we just mentioned, inspiring kindness, results in a reduced experience of bullying in the classroom. As we mentioned before, that if kids know each other well, if they're sharing time and experience with each other, it's much more supportive and folks are less likely to bully. In addition, we have produced a bullying prevention newsletter that you can find on our website. It provides resources and information about what we're doing in bullying and what is going on in the bullying prevention world around the state and around the country. We also provide bullying prevention tip sheets, which are informational pieces about how bullying can be prevented and the different things that we're doing and other schools can do. Parents are a key resource in preventing bullying, so providing resources to parents is something else that we like to do. We give presentations on the results of the climate survey that we do each year. We present those at PTO meetings as well as school staff meetings. We will speak at PTO presentations about bullying prevention in general, and specifically about internet safety, which is a growing area of concern about how folks are using the internet, using texting, using Facebook in ways that may be bullying others. So key things to remember in bullying prevention. There are lots of materials out there that can be used. They can supplement the work that you're doing. Be sure that they are age appropriate. Things that are fit for high school don't necessarily fit for elementary. Some things you'll find to be transcendent across age groups, but be very careful about selecting appropriate materials. And evidence-based material is much more successful. There are a lot of folks out there writing about bullying and bullying prevention, but you should do some research to find out which ones are evidence-based that have a proven track record so that you can have success in your efforts. For additional information, we have some resources for you. You can follow us on Twitter, and you can check us out on Facebook.
We hope that you have found this webinar to be useful. And again, please do not hesitate to contact us if we can be of any further assistance. Thanks for joining us.